WWE morale is reportedly taking a massive hit after Vince McMahon's creative return this week, with all eyes turning to SmackDown on Friday to see if the executive chairman of WWE will travel to Portland and make the sweeping changes to the Blue brand as he did during Monday night's broadcast on the USA Network. And if he does, certain WWE talents have indicated they'll either see out their contracts or they'll request their release from the company because of McMahon's return to creative power. Plus, speaking of the huge announcement that Endeavor had purchased WWE and WWE and UFC would be merging together, a law firm is investigating the transaction and seeing if the WWE shareholders got the best value out of the transaction. Has Bayley indicated that she's about to exit WWE after her WrestleMania appearance and after she was pulled from this past week's edition of Monday Night Raw at the last minute? Seth Rollins had a bizarre segment on this week's Raw where he just made the crowd sing his song, and there's a new video indicating that his segment was cut and changed whilst he was actually in the ring about to do the segment on the microphone. Is Jay White going to WWE? Well, all signs say no, and we've got details on why that is. Charlotte Flair is reportedly taking a break from WWE after her loss at WrestleMania. We've got the ratings for the post-WrestleMania 39 edition of Monday Night Raw. Bron Breakker turns heel last night on NXT. Cora Jade makes her return to the developmental brand. Rip Fowler and Jagger Reed, some had reported that they'd requested and been granted their release from the company, but that's not the case. They were at the NXT tapings last night. Logan Paul reveals he underwent a concussion test after WrestleMania 39. Dana Brooke comments after a sign promoting her was confiscated during Raw's broadcast, and Noam returns to NXT. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well as always, and you can tell from the intro we've got a massive amount of news to get into, so be sure to smash a like on the like button, be sure to subscribe bottom right hand corner. Let's get straight into this and start with the biggest story right now in WWE, and that is Vince McMahon's return to the head of creative. Vince McMahon overseeing creative and making those sweeping changes to what was a chaotic Raw broadcast on Monday night. According to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, there was a huge hit to WWE morale on Monday after Vince McMahon made sweeping changes right after WWE held a talent meeting where Paul Levesque, Triple H, and Nick Khan told talent that nothing would be changing. And minutes before Triple H did an on-screen promo, actually on television, saying much of the same. After months of being assured that Vince McMahon was not involved in creative, several WWE talent were frustrated when the day of an announced WWE deal, a bunch of Vince McMahon-esque changes were made. McMahon came along right before the show started, right after WWE-led meetings saying nothing would change, and quite literally changed much of it. He was also in gorilla position all night after WWE had told numerous sources that Triple H was going to be leading the charge in that position. There were changes made well into the show and new run sheets being passed along. McMahon had his own office all weekend. After saying in that CNBC interview that he would not be in the weeds with creative in an interview earlier that day, Vince McMahon came in and made last-minute sweeping changes that frustrated several on his roster. There were several that said they didn't even think the changes were creatively that poor, but the entire dishonesty of the whole situation, considering that over a dozen of the people had previously been fired under Vince McMahon, was a depressing blow. In addition to the hints of involvement that had been reported previously, there were big changes on short notice between the 6 p.m. Eastern talent meeting and the show itself that have largely been absent since Triple H took over creative. There were originally set to be 2 triple threat women's matches that would serve as a tournament for a Raw Women's Championship shot. Instead, the women's segments were cut short and a tag team title contender match was booked. Bayley was also scheduled to be at ringside, which was cut. We're going to talk later on about Bayley's tweet that she put out. A lot of people are talking about that. Fightful have been told that several of the women on the roster grew frustrated by the adjustment. Many staff and talent have said that after a successful WrestleMania and several months without Vince that displayed they could be successful, smooth and happy, it was demoralizing to have that happen. Several of the women on the roster were very disappointed, including a number of them that weren't even at the show. In all, this was the biggest hit to morale since Vince McMahon left his spot last year, and probably the lowest point of morale in totality since pre-WrestleMania in 2022, when it reached near all-time lows. Needless to say, Monday was a huge shot to several WWE talent and staff. As I mentioned, Vince McMahon was in gorilla position throughout the show and made numerous changes, even even while the show was on the air. Production and talent were getting instructions as the show went on the air too. Omos versus Elias, people saw that on the Raw broadcast. That was also a late addition, and several things that were originally planned for the show didn't end up happening. Fightful have also been told that Omos, he was actually in catering and he wasn't even planning on wrestling. Then the late change happened and there was a huge scramble to make sure he had even gear to compete in. An old Vince McMahon rule was to always bring your gear and always stay till the end of the show, largely because he was constantly changing things. There were also talent that was scrambling to do last minute shoots backstage as well. There were backstage elements including Cody Rhodes talking on a phone and LWO Bad Bunny integration that was also changed, but Fightful in fairness are saying they're not sure if they were Vince McMahon changes or if they were just creative as a whole changes that were decided throughout the show or late on during Monday. The decision for Brock Lesnar to team with Cody Rhodes was solidified by Monday morning, according to Sean Ross Sapp. Numerous WWE talent were disappointed as they feel this weekend was really just a way for Vince McMahon to wedge himself back into the fold. Just earlier on Monday, WWE sources claim that Triple H would be the person leading the gorilla position. However, Vince McMahon was present and many talent felt like they were sold a bill of goods. They were lied to. Now, Fightful spoke to one higher-up that said Friday SmackDown will be a big test and a really important day for the company because lots of people are noting that Vince McMahon, he was already in Los Angeles for the weekend when the Raw after WrestleMania happened. So people saying, well, he was just in town. So he was in town anyway. He was in LA. So that's maybe why everything happened the way it did. However, if Vince McMahon travels all the way to Portland for SmackDown, whether he's in gorilla position or not, that will be a huge negative sign to the talent or staff because that would suggest this is going to be a regular occurrence and this is going to be the norm going forward. There are important people in the company who had no idea he was planning to make the changes on Monday and really don't know his plans for Friday as of right now either. Fightful had heard from at least two talent, including one reportedly near the top of the card, that said they'll likely request their releases if this is a trend moving forward, and another that said they'll just ride out their contract. There are multiple wrestlers who are already exploring what their options would be in the event Vince McMahon were to be steadily involved. Now, when it comes to some of these changes that happened at Raw and WrestleMania, and again, we don't know if Vince McMahon was responsible for the WrestleMania changes. We know he was definitely involved in the Raw changes, but according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, if you wanted to see LA Knight and Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania, you were close to it. The April 3rd episode of Raw featured a ton of late last-minute changes thanks to Vince McMahon, and Fightful have learned of even more that happened throughout the weekend. Now, they can't say definitively if McMahon contributed to these changes at all. However, they can confirm WRKD Wrestling's report that LA Knight was pitched and planned to have a segment with Bobby Lashley. WWE had the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royale trophy transported to SoFi Stadium specifically to do an entrance. Of course, Lashley did appear on the show and just waved with his trophy. Originally, Shotzi was to have her tank for her entrance, and it was on the site for WrestleMania. However, it did not get used, and of course, that was the case with Vince McMahon. When he was booking SmackDown, he removed the tank from Shotzi's entrance. There was also a scrapped integration of the LWO on Raw that was likely to feature Bad Bunny. Cody Rhodes was originally to have a backstage segment where he was talking on a phone, but it was eliminated by Monday morning. The Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus Street Profits match, at least internally, was referred to as a tag team championship match. Candice LeRae and Piper Niven were both planned to have matches on Raw, then they were cut about just an hour before the show. There was originally going to be, as I mentioned, a mini tournament to determine the top contender for the Raw Women's Championship. However, it was switched to a Women's Tag Team Championship title contender match late as well. Of course, as I mentioned, there was the late Omos and Elias match that was added at the last minute. There was also online speculation that Seth freaking Rollins' Raw segment was changed at the last minute because someone ringside appeared and was giving him instructions. However, sources familiar with the situation claim it was originally scripted that way. But, I mean, we've got the video here. You can make up your own decision. Here's Rollins talking with someone at ringside and looking a bit frustrated and maybe a bit confused. Maybe his segment was cut, maybe it wasn't. What do you think?
See?
As I mentioned, it's certainly been doing the rounds on social media, and given the chaos going on backstage at Raw, you wouldn't put it past his segment as well being cancelled, cut, or shortened whilst he was actually in the ring on a commercial break. Now, of course, again, The Endeavor purchase of WWE, it's mainstream news, the merging of UFC as well, and this is quite an interesting facet to this story here. The Ademi LLP law firm is actually investigating World Wrestling Entertainment over its transaction with Endeavor. Essentially, the investigation will be on behalf of the shareholders, whether WWE has obtained a fair price for the transaction. The release on PR Newswire is as follows. This is in Milwaukee, saying Ademi LLP is investigating WWE for possible breaches of fiduciary duty and other violations of law in its transaction with Endeavor. Ademi alleges WWE's financial outlook and prospects are excellent, yet the transaction values WWE shares at only approximately $106 per share before any post-closing dividend, with Endeavor holding a 51% controlling interest in the new company and existing WWE shareholders holding a 49% interest in the new company. The transaction agreement unreasonably limits competing bids for WWE by imposing a significant penalty if WWE accepts a superior bid. WWE insiders will receive substantial benefits as part of a change of control arrangements. We are investigating the conduct of WWE's board of directors and whether they are, 1, fulfilling their fiduciary duties to all shareholders, and 2, obtaining a fair and reasonable price for WWE. If you own any common stock, they give some details saying you can get in touch, etc. So again, this could be nothing. I know obviously you see the headline, WWE being investigated by a law firm over the transaction. These things, I guess, kind of happen with these big takeovers. People, get in touch saying they might feel that they've been wronged or whatever. So keep an eye on it. It's probably nothing, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, Bayley. People are talking a lot about Bayley because, of course, she was pulled from Monday Night Raw. She did compete at WrestleMania on night 1, where she, along with her other Damage Control stablemates, Io Sky and Dakota Kai, they were defeated by Becky Lynch, Lita, and Trish Stratus. Now, Bayley posted a cryptic tweet on April 2nd that seemingly teased either a Damage Control breakup or a hiatus for the SmackDown Women's Champion. She wrote in the tweet, quote, "And sometimes the most romantic love story comes to an end. Bye." After Bayley was nowhere to be seen during Damage Control's Raw After Mania tag team bout, Dakota Kai has seemingly teased the departure for the leader of the group with her own cryptic tweet. She tweeted, quote, "I love you, Bayley." Now, following Bayley's absence from the show, as I mentioned, it was reported by Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select that she was originally scheduled to accompany Damage Control to the ring for the show. It's unclear why she was pulled from the program. She was backstage in Los Angeles, so again, it's strange and people are speculating. Does it have anything to do with Vince McMahon? Is it part of a wider plan? We'll have to wait and see. Time will only tell. She wouldn't be the first person that she's quite close to leave WWE. Mercedes Moné is the current IWGP Women's Champion. Mercedes' former tag team partner, Naomi Trinity Fatu, seemingly going to be known as Trinity Star. She's confirmed her exit, so maybe Bayley is next. Now, one person that many people assumed would be signing with WWE and actually would be on the Raw after WrestleMania was former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Jade White. And the status of the former New Japan star has been a hot topic of the wrestling world since his contract with New Japan expired back in February. White lost a loser leaves New Japan match to Eddie Kingston at the Battle in the Valley event, with many expecting him to sign with either WWE or AEW. Now, WWE, according to reports, were confident on signing Switchblade, and they said that, well, the feeling was he wasn't going to arrive in AEW, but that confidence may now be gone. Per PW Insider Elite, there was absolutely no discussion of Jay White within the company at all over WrestleMania 39 weekend. The report also notes that, based on multiple conversations with WWE officials and talent, PW Insider was told it does not appear that Jay White is WWE bound. Now, this report comes after the underwhelming Raw after WrestleMania show, where many fans had speculated about Jay White possibly debuting on the show. Some people are maybe suggesting that this could be because Jay White saw what was going on with Vince McMahon's return to the company and said, I don't want a part of that. At the same time, Tony Khan has somewhat distanced himself from signing Jay White, talking about obviously his relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling and the upcoming Forbidden Door pay-per-view. Now, there is currently a Bullet Club angle taking place on AEW television, with Juice Robinson set to take on Ricky Starks on this week's Dynamite show, so it is possible that Jay White could appear, possibly, maybe, on Dynamite tonight on TBS. If he does, we'll cover it here on the channel, of course. Now, Charlotte Flair, she's taking a break from WWE, despite the fact she only came back in, November? She didn't come back that long ago. But with WrestleMania 39 now in the books, several new champions were crowned across the two-night events. One of the highlights of the show was the SmackDown Women's Championship match between Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair, with Rhea avenging her WrestleMania 36 loss to the Queen. Following the loss, it appears as though we may not be seeing Charlotte on our screens for a while, and it's not a WWE decision. Per PW Insider Elite, Charlotte will be taking time off from the company following WrestleMania. The report notes that Charlotte had informed the company she would be taking a break from WWE over the past weekend. The creative plans for Rhea to win the SmackDown Women's Championship were in place before Charlotte informed the company she would be taking a break. Charlotte is not expected to appear on this week's edition of SmackDown, with the report noting that she was telling those backstage that she and her husband, Andrade El Idolo, were going to travel. It's unknown how long Charlotte's hiatus will be, but it was a decision made by her and not a creative one. Again, it's interesting that she can just make that call and WWE has to abide by it. I don't know, again, if this is out of frustration. I don't know what it's about, but she's taking time off, so Charlotte Flair isn't going to be seen on television anytime soon. Now, for all the talk about the Raw after WrestleMania, it being one of the lowest rated shows on Cage Match, and people saying it was chaos and all this kind of stuff, the viewership figure, as one would expect, was very, very positive. Per Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, Raw drew 2.260 million viewers, which is up considerably from the March 27 edition that drew 1.843 million viewers. This is the highest total viewership for the program since the January 23 Raw is 30 special episode. In the 18 to 49 demographic, Monday's show scored a 0.76 rating. This is also up from the week prior that scored a 0.56 rating. This is actually the highest demo rating for the show since the February 17, 2020 edition before the pandemic. WWE ranked number 1 on cable in the demo for the night. Now, lots of people were saying, see, this will say that Vince McMahon's creative decisions were correct. However, as is the case with a lot of these kind of things, it's really about what next week's number will be. If they can keep fairly high, then you can say, despite people not liking Vince's decisions, they worked out. If there's a massive, massive drop-off, that could be the deciding factor. In addition to it being the post-WrestleMania edition of Raw, the Raw After Mania, which is most of the time the highest viewed and highest rated one of the year, it was also on the day that the WWE sale to Endeavor was announced, so that's most likely a big factor as well. Switching gears, let's talk about NXT last night, and there was a huge heel turn on NXT. In the closing moments of last night's edition of the show, one star, that being Bron Breakker, that was rumored to be heading towards the main roster, has just made a big move. After losing his NXT championship at Stand and Deliver, Bron Breakker raised Carmelo Hayes' hand in victory, and on last night's NXT, Hayes called Breakker out to the ring to say thank you. While accepting his apology, Breakker noted to pass the torch gracefully as something that he learned from Tommaso Ciampa and wished to do the same. However, the goodwill would be short-lived after the duo shook hands. Bron Breakker leveled Carmelo Hayes. Taking out both the new NXT champion Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams, Bron Breakker stood tall to end the segment and cement his place as a certified heel. The crowd, for their part, however, it was kind of odd, reacting with chants of one more time, despite the fact that they just booed Bron's dastardly actions. But I guess that's the crowd inside the WWE Performance Center that goes to these kind of shows. Nevertheless, Bron Breakker's a heel. He was on the promotional material for NXT Battleground, so it would make sense that they would have the rematch there. So I guess we're going to see a situation where it's Carmelo versus Bron for the NXT Championship at Battleground, and then maybe Bron will go to the main roster. But with Vince being back in creative power of WWE, who even knows at this point? Now, it wasn't the only shocking thing last night. Cora Jade is back in NXT after an NXT star defended their title, that being Indy Hartwell. She defended her NXT Women's Championship on last night's show against Zoe Stark after Stark interrupted Hartwell celebrating her win at Stand and Deliver with the fans at the beginning of the show. Hartwell successfully retained her title. Her celebration was interrupted first by Tiffany Stratton appearing on the entrance ramp. However, the piece was short-lived when she was attacked from behind by a returning Cora Jade. Cora Jade and her bad girl attitude are back in NXT and on the hunt for the NXT Women's Championship. After a commercial break, a parking lot segment showed Cora Jade saying she would explain her actions next week on NXT. She had been out of action since January with what was reported to be an undisclosed injury, but indeed she is now back and I guess firmly in the NXT Women's Championship picture. Now this is a really strange story because a tag team that seemingly was released just a couple of days ago, they're back or they're still employed. Now it appears that that NXT superstars Rip Fowler and Jagger Reed are still very much employed by WWE. In the aftermath of the Schism's loss to Chase U at the Stand and Deliver pre-show, Fightful Select had reported that the Dyad, formerly known as the Grizzled Young Veterans, requested their release from the company. Subsequently, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer reported that Reed and Fowler's releases were granted by the promotion. While the reports were never confirmed by WWE, Reed or Fowler, it's worth noting that Reed tweeted a picture of the Grizzled Young Veterans Tuesday morning, which fans perceived as a sign of the duo's imminent WWE exit. Furthermore, shortly after their loss at Stand and Deliver, Reed sent out an emotional message, which he said it doesn't matter if he and his partner were on a dark match, a pre-show match, or handed different names by WWE, they'd still always deliver and always be grizzled. Now, amid all the chatter of their WWE departure, Reed and Fowler appeared at the NXT Level Up taping on Tuesday night, accompanying the Schism's Joe Gacy to the ring for his match against Aro Mensah. According to the fans at the arena, Ava, the daughter of The Rock, was also at the taping, as the Schism appeared as a unit in support of Gacy, the leader of the stable. What this means, I don't know. Was that their last appearance, or was all of the reports not true? We'll have to wait and see until we get any more confirmation on this, but it's still very, very surprising to say the least. Now, Logan Paul, of course, his contract has expired with WWE, I guess, after WrestleMania, but he revealed that actually he received a concussion test following his WrestleMania match. Now, during the latest episode of the Impulsive podcast, Paul revealed that for the first time, he actually got out of a wrestling match without any injuries, but he also had to get a concussion test following the bout. Sharing that there was a point in the match where he hit his head and his vision went blurry for a bit, Logan said, "For the first time after one of these wrestling events, I walked away pretty much, they call it a mouse, talking about this lump on his eyelid, like a little mark on your eye and the hand marks of Seth Rollins on my chest. He was slapping the shit out of me. I'm good, meniscus is fine, elbow's fine. Elbow hurt a little bit beforehand, but I did hit my head a little bit and my vision went blurry. These things happen, but it wasn't a concussion. It was like a vision hit. There were rings around my eyes. They gave me a concussion test and I passed." Now, Logan Paul, prior to WrestleMania, revealed that his WWE contract was going to expire following the event, although it is worth noting that WWE announced he had signed a multi-year deal in August last year, so I think some people are speculating it's all a bit of a work and he is still firmly under contract to WWE. This was a bit of a weird story as well, amid all of the other weird stories going around at the moment, particularly when it comes to Monday Night Raw. Now, Dana Brooke has reacted to a fan tweeting they had a Give Dana Brooke a Chance sign confiscated at Raw on Monday. Brooke hasn't wrestled on Raw since way back in November. She's worked pretty regularly for Main Event, which of course is taped right before Raw every single week. Now, a fan named Christian C on Twitter took the sign to Raw after WrestleMania on Monday, and it did make it onto TV before being confiscated. When Brooke found out there was a sign supporting her, she tweeted, "I got a text while I was backstage from someone in the company saying there was a sign for me in the crowd. I instantly started tearing up. I couldn't thank you enough for believing in me and everything I stand for. This matters. Thank you for having the confidence and support." However, after finding it had been confiscated, she tweeted, "I am so sorry. This is so wrong and will be addressed." She also sent out a reply saying, "Wow, I am so sorry. I will address this and Def would love to meet you personally. Thank you for you believing." When asked if anyone else's sign had been taken away, the fan replied, "Nope, just mine. Production guy came straight to me and said I was told you couldn't show it on TV anymore and took it." So, well... I don't know if there's a Dana Brooke conspiracy. Maybe it's too distracting in the crowd. I don't know, but Dana Brooke says she's going to address it. So if she does, we'll let you know. Finally, it wasn't the only return we saw on NXT last night. Noam Dar is back on NXT as well. He has arrived in NXT. He has an impressive history in professional wrestling, including runs on the main roster, 205 Live, and on the NXT UK brands. He brought with him the Heritage Cup, an NXT UK Championship won via tournament with British rounds rules, meaning the match consists of 6 3-minute rounds with 20-second rest breaks between each round. Matches are also 2 out of 3 falls. Observing the match between the NXT debut on television, in-ring debut of Dragon Lee and Nathan Fraser, Dar was shown still at ringside through the big bout, with the Heritage Cup hanging out on the commentary desk throughout the match. There was plenty of hard-hitting action and exciting near falls. However, in the end, it was Dragon Lee who picked up the victory and stood tall. So maybe we're going to see a Noam Dar versus Dragon Lee feud, maybe in the future. But there you go, guys. It's the latest WWE news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.